name is Julie Bonner. I am a member of the Redmond Toastmasters Club in Redmond, Washington. One of the things that I have found over the years is that when I'm preparing for a speech, I can oftentimes find where other people maybe have done a YouTube video of a speech, but the one thing that does not exist, it seems like, is how did the speaker prepare for the speech and what kind of feedback did they get? In this video, we're actually going to take a speaker, myself, who is working in an advanced manual called Storytelling, and we're going to profile project number 5, which is bringing history to life. And in this video, we'll take a look at how did I specifically prepare for this speech. You'll also see me giving the speech at a Toastmasters Club meeting, as well as you will see the feedback that has been given to me at the meeting itself, and a reflection upon what did I think of the feedback and how will I incorporate that feedback into other speeches in the future. I hope you find this very educational and useful if you are preparing for this speech in your club. Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. Fellow Toastmasters, this project is one that's very special to me because it asks a speaker to bring history to life. And for me, the best way that I know of to bring history to life is to actually study your own personal family history. And as a lot of you know, I am an amateur genealogist and have been since I was 16 years old. Therefore, today, what I'm going to do is to go through some history of the world and juxtaposition that with the history of my family. I will first begin at a macro level. There was a documentary a few years ago that talked about haplogroups. Did anybody ever hear of this? And basically it was a DNA test to take a look at our DNA and how, from an ancient perspective, where we came from. And what they found is that everybody goes back to Africa, to scientific Adam and Eve. So all these haplogroups that came out of Africa, some came up and took a right, and they went through Russia and China and over the Bering Strait into the Americas. Some other groups came up and took a left and went into the European continent and Scandinavian countries. I am of a haplogroup that went up, took a left. So my haplogroup is H, that went into the European continent. There is where I can actually start talking about some micro-level information. I can actually start talking about certain people, certain places, certain events. The Bonners came into the British Isles with the Norman invasion. So William the Conqueror had Bonners tagging along with him. Every Bonner in Scotland, Ireland, and England are probably all related because of that. There were no Bonners in the British Isles prior to that. One very famous Bonner was Bloody Bishop Bonner, and he persecuted Protestants back in the day. So under Mary I's reign, he was, congratulated and applauded and all of that. But under Elizabeth I, he was imprisoned, and that's where he died. I am most likely related to Bloody Bishop Bonner as some distant cousin. From there, every branch of my family tree, for the most part, came out of Great Britain from a migration perspective. And as they came out, there are various different reasons why they left the British Isles. And some of it may have to do with religious persecution. And the other part of it had to do with economic opportunity. In Europe, only the oldest son would inherit land and property for the longest time. So younger sons, and especially daughters, you were stuck with whatever you got, I guess. So coming into America, my family has been in the United States for over 400 years. In fact, my 11th great, however many greats, 11 times, great-grandfather, one of them actually came over on the Mayflower. So I do know that one of the reasons was for religious freedom. The rest of them most likely for economic opportunity. In the colonies, when it was starting to become time for the Revolutionary War, I do have 2 6-time great-grandfathers who fought in the American Revolution that I know of, Thomas Bonner and Frederick Ray. But I also have 2 5-times great-grandfathers who were loyalists. You would often sometimes think, maybe erroneously, that everybody was for the revolution that lived in the colonies, but that was not true. I have a 5-times great-grandfather, Jonas Bedford, who actually was born in England. He did not support the American Revolution, and he went back to England while the war was going on, but his family stayed behind. His wife, in fact, because women at the time had actually no legal rights or very little legal rights, she had to petition the court to be able to sell property in order to support her family and all her children. The other one, Samson Strickland, he was actually never born in England, but he was banished from the state of North Carolina. Because at the time, one of the ways that the colonies figured out who was for the revolution and who wasn't is you had to take an oath to your colony, and you had to go in front of a judge and actually declare your allegiance to your colony, and he refused to do so. I do not know where he went, since he had no relatives in England, and so it could have been anywhere. But he did die in South Carolina, or North Carolina rather, so I know he eventually went back after the war. Most of my family migration patterns have been because as an American Revolutionary military war hero, you were given lands as part of your military pension. That was also true after the Civil War. So many of my family got lands in South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, and Alabama eventually because of military war service. So as we were moving American Indians out of their native lands, these lands were given for free to military war heroes. So largely the reason I'm Southern is because a lot of these people got free land in these states. By the time the Civil War occurred, I have a few family members that did own slaves. Not all of them did. Some of them were fairly large slaveholders. I also have one distant cousin who had a gold mine in Georgia. You can still find it today in Carroll County, Georgia. And prior to the Civil War, he had mined out $250,000 out of it, which I think that's about $750,000 today. Prior to the gold rush in 1849, Georgia was the gold mining state. I don't know if you knew that or not. And there's lots of gold veins that run through there. My 4-times great-grandfather, Thomas Bonner, his will is very interesting in that he, of course, he gives land and other property to his children, but he also, for his daughters, he said, I give such and such daughter $400. It's a lot of money in 1860. And he said, and I quote, free from the debts and control of her husband. Because even then, women often had very little rights. Now, one of my grandfathers started in the Civil War. He fought in it for many years, and the last battle that actually took him out of the Civil War, he was shot in the face in Cold Harbor in Virginia. And he wrote about it later in life, in the early 20th century, and he said, and I quote, out of the 100 billion, 65 shots that were fired in the Civil War, only 10 hit me. And I have pictures of him. I have one picture of him when he first went into military service and one after. And you can kind of tell that his face droops a little bit because he was shot in the cheek. I forget which side, but you can kind of tell from that picture. So at the end of it all, History means so much more to me now that I have names and faces who are related to me, that I know fought at this battle or were involved in this political situation or something like that. And for me, that brings history alive. Madam Toastmaster. There you are.
This is my first evaluation. So from what I understand, doing an evaluation is about talking about what I found helpful and what I enjoyed about the speech, and maybe finding some feedback, some helpful feedback for Julie, and sort of rounding it all up with points at the end. So, juxtaposition, one of my favorite words, actually. I love that word. I really love your excitement, Julie. You had a lot of energy, and I always love hearing your family stories. I've heard several family stories throughout several speeches over time, and they're always engaging. I love the South, coming from there myself. A couple of different things that I really found engaging were the fact that the bloody Bishop Bonner was applauded for his tactics. That was a very colorful character representation. I could really visualize the places that you were describing. I particularly enjoyed the idea of that we, or the fact that we all originated from Africa, and the visualization of how some people went right towards Russia and China, and some people went left towards the European continent, and it's just a really nice visual. Let's see. The toughest thing for me is always finding some kind of, feedback of what could be done better. The only thing that I could find was that your eye contact was really good, but midway, when you were getting really excited, your eye contact got a little faster, little faster moving around. So I would say in the beginning of the speech, I enjoyed the slower eye contact. Overall, I thought it was a very well researched, very compelling speech, and I love your family stories. So well done.
Hi there. So now I have had the opportunity not only to listen to Lisa Flowers in the club meeting itself and hear her evaluation of my speech, but also during a club meeting, most clubs will have all of the members who are present fill out pieces of paper that give feedback to the speaker. And for myself, I had several little slips of paper to take a look at, and there were good things that I did in the speech, as well as ideas for improvement. A few of the things that I did well is that people tend to like the way that I speak, as far as I have a conversational style, and I usually have good facial expressions, and I smile, and they tell me that when I smile, my face sort of lights up and gets very animated and things like that. The things that they felt that I could work on are things like space fillers. And that's probably one of the things that as speakers we can sometimes get a little caught with, oh, what exactly was I going to say next? Or in my case, one of the things that where I would kind of lose my train of thought is I was trying to pack so much information into a 7 to 9 minute speech, which, I probably was trying to put way too much information into it. And so I got tripped up a little bit, and I think you probably saw that in the video where I was speaking. And, so all of the things that people tell me that, feedback is not a negative thing. It really is not. And over the years, because I've done this a lot and I've practiced a lot, I have sort of come to terms with the feedback is something for me to assess, take a look at. If I want to adopt it, I can. If I didn't feel like it was perhaps relevant, or, maybe I had a slightly different take on it, it doesn't mean that they hate my style or that they hate the way that I speak or anything like that. And so it is always a good thing to take a look at those little slips of paper and to see, okay, so what could I do better next time? And I think that based on the information that I shared in planning for this speech, I know that I was trying to do this macro level kind of analysis and everything. And because of the fact that I had so much information, I think that if I had honed in on one particular person or one particular event, that some of the space fillers I used, I think that they would have been non-existent. So that's something that I will definitely keep honing as I practice. Thank you.